Good?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Thank you, Michael. Anyone else? Paxton, is it? Yeah, okay. Item five. Item 5 is public questions, and we've received none, have we, Rachel? No. Okay, so straight away we go on to item 6, which is tourism destination management plan. Steve, over to you.
Thank you.
You've got to press the button.
Apologies. Thank you. It's all quite new to me, all this technology. So hopefully it's coming through loud and clear. If I share the presentation. Is that not sharing? No.
There you go. It's coming up.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I was looking at that one and there was nothing happening on that one. Okay. So, and then slideshow. Yeah, just I'm beginning. Okay, good to go. Okay, so thanks for the opportunity this morning to come along and present the work of the team, specifically around the destination management plan. And in particular, the ask from you as a scrutiny committee was to look at the plan's priorities, achievements so far, and the progress with the delivery of the next plan. Just in terms of context and some of the sort of documents that we were referring to in the presentation, obviously the sort of current plan, which ceased in 2020, ran from 2017. Since then, of course, we've had the dreaded pandemic, which was a severe blow to the tourism sector. What we've done as a council, working with the private sector in terms of post-COVID recovery, and then the plans we've got in place then for the new plan. So those are kind of the areas that I'd cover this morning. In terms of the existing plan, which ran from 2017 to 2020, context really is that it was a document that Welsh Government don't necessarily insist on, but if you want any money from them, they like you to have one and therefore referencing projects within it. And therefore it is very much a catalyst for funding. It's an opportunity to highlight the importance of the sector because, we all know that it generates a hell of a lot of money into the local economy, as well as safeguarding and supporting new and existing jobs. It's an opportunity to demonstrate the partnership working, and it tries to tackle some of the main issues that are facing the sector. And, not forgetting we as a council have a big role in helping support and deliver part of that, because we are part of that sector as well with some of the assets that we own specifically within cultural services, but some of the other areas that we manage in terms of the public realm. And of course, it's got to be strategic in its nature as well. So there's a rather impressive looking DMP timeline. So taking you from the top to the bottom, that's a bit of a potted history really of the DMPs that we've had since 2013 when we first launched one, which replaced a past tourism strategy. Where the current one, which I say current, which ceased in 2020. What we've been doing in terms of tourism recovery action plan, which was our response to COVID, the pandemic, and then the bit in the middle then is the timeline that we're looking at 2023 to 2025 for the new DMP. And just to highlight all those other key council priorities and documents which will influence that plan. So I think, we're all around the table and everyone online would agree that, what Swansea wants to be is a world-class visitor destination, and that's our vision there at the top. And in order to achieve that, we've been highlighting a number of key priorities, and they're all centered around working in partnership with the private sector and other third sector public bodies, raising the quality of the tourism experience for visitors, making it a year-round destination and not just busy in the summer months where it's puts a particular strain on services, and to make it more sustainable by making it all year round, by working with businesses to make them not only environmentally sustainable but economically sustainable as well. As a structure for delivering the past plan, that's how we've been working in terms of internal working groups around marketing and events, around infrastructure, public realm, business support. and then the tourism team, a little bit of the glue in between and all that, and then reporting to a steering group chaired by Councillor Francis Davis there, with representatives from Visit Wales, Stephen Crocker from Tourism Swansea Bay to my right here, and of course, other key colleagues then as and when the agenda called for presentation and input. So in terms of key achievements, just looking back, 2017 was the year of legends. These are sort of theme years that Visit Wales insist on, is some example of the work. And the other reason why I said it's a good opportunity to highlight some of this work this morning is because you wouldn't necessarily see any of this, because it is very much targeted outside of Wales in the main, trying to attract visitors to Swansea during the course of the year. 2018, then the theme year there was the Year of the Sea, and naturally being one of the best coastal destinations in Wales, we had a lot to offer. It was a slightly different edge to our campaign that year, in that we secured some money and we had a campaign which went round the destination, it went round Wales, and it went over to Ireland as well to actually promote what tourism in Swansea had to offer. 2019, the year of discovery. Again, we did our activity and our campaigns around really what the destination had to offer, potentially people for the first time, but those returning in terms of walking, cycling, all the activities as well that were on offer. A lot of what is coming up this morning, examples of the work and the content that the small team, had worked on, and the sort of coverage that you see there in some of the daily publications are as a result of the work that we've instigated to attract journalists to the area, and that's a key part of our strategy moving forward. We've grown our social media following, as you would expect from a leading destination. We do particularly well in terms of our social media strategy, very much part of our own sort of in-house sort of review and sort of refocus of our marketing, really. Working in partnership, Tourism Swansea Bay, first memorandum of understanding, working with operators on things like the tourism awards, and working with them really to grow the amount of businesses that we both work with, because we've both got a shared interest really in making sure that businesses are well informed, businesses have got the information, certainly over the COVID period as well, and so that they're fully briefed really in terms of what the key issues are, what the key challenges are, and what the key sort of projects that we're working on. One of the key internal successes as part of the DMP was the Beaches Management Group, where we completely overhauled the plan really to make it a little bit more doable in terms of partnership working, very much internal partnership working with other colleagues within the gift of the Place Directorate, it has to be said, but ultimately it's been a huge success in galvanizing colleagues from other parts of the service together to understand the vital role that they play in making sure that our beaches, and in particular our blue flag beaches, of which we have 3, are maintained to a high standard. And some of the examples as well go beyond just maintaining things. It is about developing beaches as well. And as you can see from this, one of the key achievements was the change in places facility that we had introduced down at Caswell. Trade engagement is vital. We have to work with the private sector for many, many reasons. And there's some examples during 2017 and 2020 where we met with the private sector. Very interested in the work, not only us as a tourism team are doing, but colleagues like Hugh on the call, special events, in terms of, what activity they need to be aware of so that they can pass that information on to their guests. Highly successful tourism awards in 2019. It was the last time that we did it, but again, it was a partnership between ourselves and Tourism Bay to deliver probably one of the biggest award schemes in Wales. And Visit Wales were always pleased to promote this. Not that it needs much promoting, because it gets sold out quite easily. And as I mentioned, in terms of partnership working, supporting some of the big capital projects that are on the horizon, nearly over the line, with the type of information and intelligence they need to to ensure that the businesses that they're in conversations with understand what the trends are in terms of tourism, how many visitors we get, what's the occupancy like in local hotels, what's the visitors think of the the destination. So all of this helps feed into the stuff that Hugh will provide businesses in terms of making this an attractive proposition. And just to sort of sum that up, in a nutshell, the last time we had a normal year, which is in 2019, because we haven't got 2022 yet, 4.8 million visitors visited the destination, generating over 477 million pounds into the local economy, supporting nearly 6,000 jobs. Okay, so that's direct and indirect jobs. The last visit to the survey that we did was last year, but in terms of specifically in 2017, we could see, many were on a repeat visit. They're pretty much getting all their information from the internet these days. The reasons why they came, that hasn't changed over the years. They're very much attracted to the coast, the natural environment. That's the main reason for their visit. And one of the key points that always comes out of it is that, it's very, very high recommendation rate. They all say that they would let other people know that, it's well worth a visit to Swansea Bay. Those STEAM figures now are something that we've been doing since way beyond 2008, but that just shows you the trend. Whilst the individual year-on-year figures are really, really positive, it's important to show the trend, particularly now with COVID, because we're going to see a little bit of a dip. But we're very confident that there's some very good signs of recovery from the sector. Visitor numbers, again, going up, as we've built attractions over the years, as we've introduced new facilities, we've invested in others, it shows that we continue to attract more visitors. It isn't always necessarily the key aim to attract more people, but those that are coming, we'd like to get them to spend a little bit more as well into the local economy. So from an environmental point of view, that's one of the key sort of sub-asks really that we look for. In terms of visitor days, that's the number of days that they're staying. And of course, then all of a sudden, when everything was going well, 2009, COVID-19, and of course, tourism was one of the worst affected sectors. It was the first to close, last to reopen. The restrictions, the opening and closing were periodic throughout that 2-year period. There was closures, events were cancelled. Businesses were laying off staff. It was very difficult then to re-recruit. Then we had all that phased reopening. There was no consistency. 1 minute as a team, we were telling people not to visit, which is very alien to us. The next minute we were telling them to come back, but come back safely. And then you could only, if you were in a 6-mile radius, you could move around the destination. Remember those days? They were, a real challenge really from a team's point of view, but ultimately from a sector's point of view, it was one of the biggest challenges I think they've ever faced, was certainly since foot and mouth as well, whenever that was. So in terms of what was our response to that, we had a tourism recovery action plan. Because the DMP expired, we wanted something to bridge the existing plan and the new plan that we were working on. Everything was kind of put on hold while we continued to make sure that we would review and research, what was one of the key aims, to make sure that we had up-to-date and relevant information ready for recovery, monitor and engage with the businesses whilst we could, just to make sure that we had a grasp of what they were challenged and facing, to make sure that we were keeping them abreast, certainly of the Welsh government changes, because that was a bit of a nightmare, wasn't it? They were changing every Friday. Colleagues in Visit Wales as well were, we were in regular contact with them to make sure that the messages that we put out mirrored what was saying nationally within Welsh government. But ultimately, we had to make sure that the businesses understood it, because a lot of it was government speak, and it was a real challenge to make sure that it was conveyed in a way that the sector could actually deal with the instructions that were coming their way, but mainly as well to be there to support them, because it was the start of when we were issuing significant numbers in terms of pounds, shillings and pence grants, because businesses needed grants to survive. But also, one of the key strands as well was to make sure that we were continually engaging with those people who wanted to visit, because we needed them to come back as soon as the restrictions were lifted. So we wanted to make sure that we were rebuilding sort of customer confidence, because we were following the sort of Welsh Government guidelines, and we could see that, you know, visitors were, they were keen to come back, but only when it was safe to do so. They only wanted to come back to certain parts of the destination because they wanted to be in the outdoors where, you know, transmissions was a lot, you know, there's a lot less chance of that happening. And, you know, that ongoing messaging was changing on a weekly, fortnightly, monthly basis. You know, like I said, we've always encouraged people to visit the destination, but we found ourselves saying, don't come, you can't come yet. But ultimately, what we wanted out of that 1 year plan was a stronger local tourism and hospitality sector. We wanted to make sure that when visitors come back, they were confident to do so. We wanted to start reminding them that as soon as things were ready to come back, that they could start booking and start instilling that confidence, that for the private sector, they could see the bookings trickling through. And ultimately, we wanted to see a bit of recovery generally across the sector. Some of the key, achievements, ultimately, the engagement with the private sector, with our colleagues at Tourism Swansea Bay. We made sure that as a Swansea Council now, that we dealt with hundreds of business inquiries, but hundreds of business support inquiries directly for their accessing the grants that we were enabling or hosting on behalf of Welsh Government. We wanted to make sure that they had the information when it was safe to reopen and what they needed to do, you know, making sure they were put through to colleagues in environmental health. Licensing also had a key part to play. Making sure they were updated regularly every Friday. My colleague Geraldine at the side there, along with the team, were making sure that the information was conveyed. And it's been so well received that, you know, even this week now, you know, we're getting more and more people signing up to this information because they know that, one, it's a trusted source, obviously, as is coming from the council, but ultimately we're giving them the most timely information that they need to act on as businesses. There was significant support from our own budget as well, not only through the Economic Recovery Fund, but also reallocating some of our own resources as well, some of which have been some grants that we've been able to support. But to make sure that, you know, we had some other survey work going on so that we could see what was happening with the sector, what was impacting them the most. And, you know, ultimately be in a position that when all those restrictions were lifted, that we were ready to go. One of the things that we were keen to support the sector on was a grant, and 100% grant that was issued for businesses in certain areas of Gower was secured through the Economic Recovery Fund. It was aimed at small businesses because we felt that going back to those strategic objectives, we wanted to make sure that they were able to raise the quality of their businesses, but ultimately with 2 years of trading being wiped off, they didn't have the resources to do so. So the ERF funding enabled us to support businesses 100% grant, 100% funding up to 8,000 grant, and it was so successful that, you know, it enabled businesses to really focus in on quality elements of their business. So they were able to upgrade things like kitchens and bathrooms. And ultimately, going back to that quality strategic objective, was we wanted them to be able to raise their star grading system, because that's a good measure that is a good quality business that the visitors are going to see. And there were some quirky things as well along the way, because I think from a PR point of view, it's always nice when we got some businesses that are, you know, just pushing the boundaries a little bit in terms of the product that they've got. So there's some examples there of trying to make some glamping pods all year round by making them lined so that they can attract visitors throughout the winter months. But, you know, even things like these little outdoor saunas as well, you know, these are the types of projects that we supported. Beaches management plan went on from success to success. We managed to, you know, retain our blue flag status at Caswell, Langland, at Portinen. You know, we got some voluntary non-smoking beaches as well. Some of the successes, and as well the barbecue bins, which, as we know, you know, they can hit the headlines and hit that headlines badly. But working with colleagues in cleansing, we managed to secure additional barbecue bins because obviously the problem was spreading. So in terms of what we're doing from a marketing point of view, yes, we grew our social media following. We're only second to Cornwall now, Visit Cornwall, in terms of the numbers of social media followers we got. As I said, those were some of the key messages that we had to adapt throughout the course of the pandemic, from love being local. You remember the Eat Out to Help Out scheme. We're good to go, the welcome back, plan, book and travel, all those messages that were going out to visitors to remind them at key points throughout the pandemic that, things weren't, if they weren't ready for them to come back, there were schemes in which they could, get ready to start to engage in. And there's some examples of the messaging that we put home: home, stay safe. Like I said, completely alien to what we normally do. But then we were very keen to make sure that when it was clear for us to welcome visitors back, that we had all the content that they would want to see. So we were producing videos to go out on social media. We made sure our photography and videography was updated, and the marketing messages that you see coming up here now actually reflected the time during COVID that we were at, really, in terms of the messaging that we could go out. And again, we were still attracting visitors now as the restrictions were lifted. We were still making sure that in some key publications we had coverage. And obviously, whilst events couldn't take place in person, we were still keen to do something. And, things like the Wales Air Show, we did a digital version of that, which was really, really successful, with nearly 100,000 people viewing that. The Christmas parade we did virtually as well, and 41,000 people viewed that as well online. So some real successes really with regards to events, which, as we all know, is such an important part of the offer. We then moved into the reopening phase just after COVID, and we wanted to make sure that visitors, when they came back, they were able to return to their sort of happy place. And that was the campaign that the marketing team came up with. And again, we were making sure that we were in some of the main publications, and then, everybody was visiting responsibly. 2022, in terms of destination marketing, was a pretty good year, because we saw the introduction of the Dark Skies initiative. And the application the authorities is pursuing for that designation. We also managed to attract Mr. Tim Peake to the Brangwyn Hall for a speech, for a presentation. But as part of that as well, we managed to secure a local school to meet him down on Gower and to do a talk around Dark Skies. We know that everyone seems to have bought a four-legged friend during COVID, and therefore dog-friendly businesses, something that we're working with Tourism Swansea Bay on in terms of promoting all the dog-friendly venues that we got. But we still managed to have resources secured so that we could do some outdoor media as well. Again, this was through the Recovery Fund, so that we were making sure that people in our key target markets in London in particular were having reminders of what they've missed over the last couple of years. And a nice one, which sort of came out of the last challenge that we had in Scrutiny about what we were doing from an environmental tourism point of view, we managed to get Yolo to come down. And he's done some spring watch visits and some autumn watch visits as well. So whilst that was a prompt from Scrutiny and an action for us to take forward, it was an opportunity when we got in touch with him, and he's done some really good social media stuff for us, which has enabled us to reach out and promote our environmental credentials. Again, 2022, we launched on TikTok, which is this new, well, not so new now, but everybody's on TikTok at the moment, and we managed to produce a visitor guide as well. Which is, which we managed to circulate to businesses. Major events returned, major concerts, big concerts in Singleton Park. Iron Man last year for the first time, which was a huge success for Swansea. Again, some of the old favourites like outdoor theatre was hugely successful last year at Oystermouth Castle, and of course the Swansea Bay 10K, which returned, and that celebrated its 40th race as well, which was really, really popular from those people who wanted to dress up in 80s gear. And of course the return of the Christmas parade. Everybody loves the Christmas parade, and again it was hugely successful last year. Again, in terms of economic recovery, for this second round of funding, we've had even more money to support even more businesses. So 15 projects now have been supported with the grant. That's all going to be completed by March this year. We're now starting to receive some of the early signs of research which indicate that the sector is recovering, and recovering well. And recovering a little bit quicker than other parts of South West Wales as well. The STEAM research, which we get, which highlights the volume and value, is showing that compared to our colleagues in South West Wales, i.e. Neath Talbot, Pembrokeshire and Carmarthenshire, we seem to be, responding a bit more significantly than they are in terms of both visitor numbers, visitor days, and the value as well seems to be significantly more than other parts of South West Wales. We've managed to do a trade survey, which is vital to understand the views of businesses because they have still got some major challenges, some major issues, and they've still got some concerns around some key issues. But pleasingly, the last time we did a trade survey, we'd had just over 60 businesses responded. This time round, it was 125 responses, which is really, really good. Bearing in mind, we're talking about just over 300 people in the 300 businesses in the sample. So that's a very, very valuable insight as to what they feel are the challenges moving forward. That's all going to inform the new destination management plan. But some of the key things that, some of the businesses said that, they had good levels of business in 2022 or excellent. And, that's both encouraging both from the attractions point of view, but also it's even more significant from an accommodation operator's point of view. From the research that came back, 73% are showing good or excellent levels of business from last year. In terms of, one of the things that we'd be able to benchmark against the Wales average, 48% rated 2022 performance better than 2021. Now, comparing that to the sort of Visit Wales barometer, and I can't see the figure because the little diagram there was, thanks, Jeff. So the Visit Wales barometer showed only 21% had indicated that their sort of business was performing better. So, that just sort of makes that comparison really that as far as the businesses are concerned, there are some good green shoots of recovery. Occupancy levels are either full or nearly back to the pre-COVID levels. So some of the businesses that responded to this, again, in terms of, the questions asked, are feeling fairly confident on the basis of the 2022 indicators. And in terms of the longer term optimism, 62% felt, very optimistic or optimistic about the longer term prospects. 45% plan to expand. And 73% felt very well informed from the team during the last few years. Now, obviously, that's not high 90% or anything like that. There are still major challenges for many businesses. And those are pretty much summed up with some that are happening out of Welsh Government with changes to the planning law, the 182-day rule, the tourism levy, which a lot of businesses are firmly opposed, and statutory licensing. This is about making sure there's a level playing field, really, that all businesses that operate within the sector are registered. There's also, they've highlighted planning rules are still a challenge. The cost of living crisis is still going to hit them, they feel, in 2023. Recruiting staff, like it has been for many sectors, is still very, very high on their agenda. They're still getting a high turnover of people and they can't get good staff coming through. And this whole issue about seasonality is still a major challenge. How they want support in the future to look like: continued support with the marketing that we've been doing over the years. Grants, naturally, they still need more grants to improve their product. Continue this business advice and support sort of network that we've got going, the free marketing packages that we've been offering during COVID, and to make sure that they can continue to liaise with other council departments, not just the tourism team. So that's all the COVID stuff. Apologies for cramming so much in so quickly, but I'm just going to go on to the final part now, which is the destination management plan and how we've been developing that in order to have a plan ready for this year and to take us forward into 2025. We produced a visitor survey, which we referred to. We've produced a tourism trade survey, and we're currently working with colleagues in economic development on a hotel demand study. All three of those pieces of research are so invaluable in terms of informing what the new plan is going to look like and its priorities. we don't feel they're going to change much. They're still going to be about raising the quality of the destination. We're still going to be about working, with colleagues in the third, private and public sectors. It's still going to be trying to make it an all year round, sustainable, seasonable destination. And key to that are going to be our own wider economic recovery in terms of the major projects that we hope to attract this year. The regeneration very much in the heart of the city centre, continuing to attract major events, concerts, the likes of Ironman, but also enabling other events to take place. Funding as well, that's key. We still need funding to help deliver a lot of projects, but we're hoping to have a draft of the DMP by the end of February, and then taking that initially to the next steering group in April of the Destination Management Plan steering group. And you'll be pleased to hear that I've hopefully crammed in the ask of this morning, which was to cover sort of the DMP prior to COVID, what we did during COVID, and our plans for the next Destination Management Plan 23 to 25.
Thank you, Steve. I think it's really encouraging to the presentation, and I think what we'll do is we'll send it around to members as well. Mr. Crocker, Steve Crocker, would you like to say a few words at this part, or?
Not really, other than I think obviously the tourism team in the council.
Can you put your mic on, please, Steve?
Yes, I think we should congratulate your tourism team, because I think they do a great job. They've been working very hard during difficult times, and I think we are trying to announce the awards going to come later this year, the tourism awards. And I think we probably theme it along the lines that you survived. That will be it, because a lot of people didn't. I think what we've got here is much of the same, and I think that the challenges next year are going to be quite different. I think businesses are struggling in different ways than what we used to, costs of energy and other things. So I think in the future we might have to modify how we look at that, but that's something that will come as the year progresses, I think. But overall, I thought it was an excellent presentation, and he should be congratulated.
Councillor Robert Francis Davis.
Thank you, Chris. I'd like to pump my thanks forward to Steve, Fran, Geraldine, a very small team, but been a very effective team during these very difficult times. Also to Steve Crocker as well, and the Swansea Bay. They have worked well together. We were conscious of the hospitality industry, tourism industry being hit particularly bad, and that we didn't charge any subscriptions through the year for people to be members. And in fact, our membership has increased enormously because of that. And that's encouraging. They really like the information that's put out. Geraldine gets information out every Friday. It's like clockwork that everybody gets this information. And people are better informed now in the tourism industry in Swansea. And I think the lead that Swansea as a council has taken anyway on things like the arena and other developments, Wine Street, and actually making Swansea a destination. I think we're getting a much higher profile nationally and internationally because of the investment being made in the city. So overall, I'm confident for the future in Swansea. And if anybody has any questions, we're all happy to take them.
Okay, I've got two questionnaires. Councillor Mike White first, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just thank Steve and the team for an excellent presentation. In difficult times, the last couple of years which we've gone through. Steve, what I would like to ask, in regards to with input with local businesses and traders, as you know, I mentioned when we had a previous meeting about promoting our own homegrown marketing. like using the entrances to our market, because Swansea market is, as you know, one that the prestigious award of the best market in Great Britain, and also are there any sort of opportunities where we can perhaps promote our tourism and what we've got to offer in Swansea on the gateways into the city?
Thank you, Mike. Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor White. I think certainly with the market, it's a key part of the city offer now. I think, you know, the investment that's been happened over the last couple of years, we've been fully aware of and engaging with Lisa Wells in terms of and what I'll do, I'll share some of our most recent videos of which, and photography, which very much uses the market to promote the city centre offer as one of the many reasons to visit. We know the market is still hugely popular. You only have to go in there on a Saturday morning. You know, it's still, you know, still very much on people's to-do list when visiting the city centre for a vast array of products really that it's got there. And that's very important to us too, as part of the promotion. We certainly take journalists in there as well. You know, they like to see it. Wales' largest indoor market is how we promote it. So we very much is a very much part of the mix. In terms of the wider area, yeah, I think, you know, certainly with areas like what's happening over at Havard Morva Copper Works, we're certainly keen to make sure that when things are open there and some of the trails are fully developed, that you know, they very much become part of the offer. And certainly with hopefully the introduction of the pontoon there, where we could probably be taking people from the marina up to that part of the world, I think we certainly will have a reason to visit there in the future. And following on from Councillor Francis Davis's confidence, I think, you know, there's a lot of people now that are very confident that the introduction of that destination in its own right will be, you know, will enable probably a different market with Penderyn. You know, we hope to work with them in terms of group visits, PR visits. You know, they'll be offer, you know, tours of the facility. So I think it's another reason to visit another part of the destination, if that kind of answers your question, Councillor White.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah. Sorry, Chair. Yeah, it's just that I know, obviously, you know, the market is the jewel in the crown for us in Swansea, as you know. Everybody, you know, who goes there, you know, but just on the gateways into the city, have we got any sort of options that we could promote what we got to offer in Swansea for people that's coming into Swansea?
So my team manage the bridge banners. So that's probably one of the sort of key sort of assets that we got really that can influence people coming in and out of the city. Perhaps those people who don't necessarily live in Swansea will certainly be greeted by, you know, some form of marketing message when they come in along Fabian Way. You know, we've got them to the north at Davati as well. We've got them in the west at Olfa, by Olfa School there. We've also got them on Fabian Way and by the university. So, you know, we very much, those are assets for people entering the city, you know, to be aware of either events that are taking place or generally campaigns like our Try Our Trails campaign at the moment. That's very much something that's aligned to what Visit Wales are promoting. And the aim of that is very much to encourage more people to try different things like walking along the River Towie and experiencing the sort of development that's taking place there. So yeah, we're working with the commercial team on other opportunities as and when they arise, making sure that things like the information boards in and around the city, the infolinks, you know, they've always got something up to date on there in terms of what campaigns or what attractions or what events are taking place. So we try to utilize all the gateways really into the city, you know, but you know, we're not necessarily that too costly to our budget mainly.
Can I bring in Councillor Robert Francis Davis, please, Mike?
Yeah, I'd like to again congratulate Lisa Wells and the city centre management team. They came up with looking at the centre of Swansea Market where the tables were. That's been revamped, where there's now a lot more events taking part in the market, bringing extra footfall through the market, being supported as well by BID, the Business Improvement District. and the city centre management. I think people are well aware of Swansea as a market. It's more accessible to now since we've had the new bridge across Stoistermouth Road to the arena, the Crunchy Bridge or whatever people want to call it. People are walking through there, and then I think they didn't realise how close Oxford Street was to the new arena or to the Maritime Quarter. That's linked it all up. And the footfall is increasing, and that's very healthy as well. So the market is a jewel. And I know that a leading company in Swansea, the CEO came down to look at the store in Oxford Street, and his words were he was really knocked away by the Swansea market. He absolutely loved it. So that's it's surprising how things like Swansea market give confidence to major national, international retailers that we are looking to retain, if not come into the city.
Right. I have questions from Councillor Jeff Johnson. Then I have a written question from Councillor Evans. So, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And thanks, Steve. You know, a really good presentation. A lot of really good information there. And it's good to see things actually, shall we say, you know, spend increasing and so on. I thought the STEAM index was really interesting. You know, a bit of information actually there. And it'd also be interesting to see how the, shall we say, the present and probably the future economic climate will affect that. One thing I think one thing is going to be pretty sure is that people are not going to have the money that they've perhaps had over the last few years. And, you know, do we actually advertise that, you know, Swansea is a value for money holiday at the end of the day? I don't want to say that it's a cheap holiday or whatever, that people really are attracted not only to the, you know, the area, but really that it's, shall we say, a reasonable family holiday. And one thing I was going to ask as well, and I think Councillor Robert Francis Davies touched on it with regards to international. Now that we've actually come out of Brexit, do we see any signs that that has affected the visits by international visitors?
Right, thank you. Steve?
Yeah, so Councillor Jones, just picking up a couple of questions then. So in terms of value for money, I think people leave having experienced value for money here because we're not London prices. But, you know, what I'll do is I think what will be useful to summarize the visitor survey really in terms of what people did experience when they were here, and spend was up. So, you know, people do appreciate that cost of living things have increased and therefore are prepared to, you know, to pay. They may not necessarily have done as much as they would have previously, but not forgetting a lot of what people can do when they visit this area is relatively cheap in terms of, you know, they're very much drawn to the coast path. They're very much drawn to beaches. They're very much drawn to the natural environment. As an authority, we have a number of key assets that are free to visitors to the city. You know, all the sort of trail marketing that we're doing at the moment is very much aimed at residents. And, you know, acknowledging that the cost of living crisis is a challenge for them, that we've got assets that they can go and visit, whether that be a library, an art gallery, a museum, or, you know, just an open space when they can go after Christmas and actually, you know, their own personal health and well-being can be benefited from some of the things that we're involved in. I think in terms of, we still want people to spend more, you know, there's not, you know, because it is very much about supporting the sector. And we have seen businesses investing significantly in their product over the last few years, you know. So there is one side of me, yes, wants to make sure that people, you know, do have value for money when they come here. They can spend as little or as much as they want, but also as well, I think in terms of, you know, we do have a very good offer as well for those people who do have money, and we'd like them to impart quite a bit more of it in the future as well. With regards to Brexit, whilst not on the political side of Brexit. I think what would be key is that, again, with the visitor survey, we did see stability in terms of the numbers of international visitors that were surveyed during the period, which was March until the end of September in 2022. So I haven't got the specific numbers, but again, I'm more than happy to share a little sort of executive summary, really covering a couple of the points that you mentioned, Councillor Jones, which will give you the detail on top of what I'm saying anecdotally.
Okay, Jeff?
Yeah, just the other point with regards to, you know, coming out of Europe. Have we seen any signs that has affected the tourist industry?
I think Steve answered that by saying they're not quite sure yet until they finish the survey.
Sorry, Steve, I was talking to somebody, my wife actually, and I missed that point, so I apologise.
No, Jeffrey,
I'm
pay
glad
attention.
I'm glad you're talking to your wife, Councillor Jones.
Just
We
about.
all got to talk to his wife. I have a question from Councillor Chris Evans, which is quite appropriate at the moment. What and how much are we doing to promote ecotourism in Swansea? For example, it can be difficult for hikers to get to parts of Gower early in the morning without using a car. And also, how will our tourism plans fit into the overarching ambition for carbon neutral by 2030, council, and 2050 as a country, sorry.
Didn't realise the questions were going to be so tough this morning. It's okay. So with regards to, if I can just perhaps highlight the tourism support fund. So that was very much geared around, making businesses a little bit more sustainable, either environmentally or economically. So we supported a couple of projects in particular where we've allowed them to introduce electric charging points at their business because they've noticed an increase in visitors to their establishments, bringing electric cars and asking for them. So that's quite a nice one. We've also supported things like wood-fired, and I don't know if I'm saying the right thing here, but wood-fired outdoor hot tubs as well. So that's very, rather than the sort of plastic electric hot tubs that perhaps were a little bit of a rise in sales during the course of COVID. Me in particular happened to buy one, but I haven't used one since the cost of electric. But, so from an environmentally point of view, like I said, the last time I came to Scrutiny, there was a whole series around what we were doing from an ecotourism point of view. And that's why we were very keen to work with the likes of Yolo Williams twice now during the last couple of years, very much looking at the spring offer and the autumn offer at a number of key destinations around Swansea, Mumbles and Gower as what the area had to offer from an ecological point of view. He's very, very well very knowledgeable about our area. He loves this part of the world, Gower in particular, but he was able to visit places like Clyne, Swansea Bay, some parts of Gower as well, and talk up what people could see, but also in a way that they could do it from a sustainability point of view moving forward. So we've been very keen to promote our ecology, environmental credentials on social media on the back of Yolo's visit. In terms of the investment, as I said, we're very much looking for projects to come forward which are, don't just tip the hat to making sure that we're working towards carbon neutral, but actually demonstrate how they could, help us achieve the aims that we've got as an authority.
Robert Francis Davis.
Yeah, research has shown that a lot of the people that come to Gower for holidays, it is because of cycling and walking in particular in an area of outstanding natural beauty. And Swansea's cycle pathways have been, increased enormously over the last few years. And so therefore it is easier. As regards buses, well, that's a different matter. It's difficult to have a good, I'm not going to say a public transport because it's a private transport system. Let's make no mistake about it, it's hardly public transport. It's one, I don't think it's affordable. It's not that accessible. When we had deregulation of buses, we were promised that this would create far more buses. Come along, if you remember, Margaret Thatcher, I think it was, turn around and we'd have small buses coming around, going off the main routes. Now, if you live off the main routes, normally those between the hospitals in Swansea, between Morriston and Singleton Hospital, there's very few bus services at night. And so therefore, trying to get people down to Gower with a transport system that is affordable, accessible, is a real problem. One thing we are looking at is working with Transport for Wales and Welsh Government on is bringing in a pilot of hydrogen buses, which will, and I think this will be some 25 buses coming into our area where that will make a huge difference. And I think we will probably be a main pilot in Wales, and probably on a par with anything in the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I think when we had the Gower Pony, which is incredibly successful running from Oystermouth, and when it was encouraged, it's unfortunate that the managing director of the bus company decided to move away from Swansea, and so took that scheme away from him, which was really very, very successful. Yeah, by all means.
Two more points really to that question. One is biodiversity is now a key priority within the beaches management plan. So working with colleagues to make sure that, you know, some of the key challenges we're facing as authority filter down to the beaches management plan. And also we are working with, whilst there are logistical challenges, but that doesn't devalue the partnership that we've got with First, both in terms of working with them in bringing journalists and visitors into the area by rail, but also with First at a local level, who are our event partner now for many of the events that we're putting on in the city centre. Next one being the Croeso event on St David's weekend. And, they are working with us to make sure that residents within the city and county of Swansea can come into the city to enjoy that event over the course of the 2 days. Thank you.
Councillor Peter Black.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I remember they put the small bus up Manor Road and the residents blockaded to stop it going, so it wasn't always as popular as you think. I think my question actually was around journalists, because you do see occasionally articles in the press. The last one I think I saw was in The Guardian, where we put the journalist up in Morgan's Hotel and they went to a very expensive restaurant in Mumbles or something, which sort of gave one impression of the area. I've seen this very, very good article in this month's Country Farm magazine as well about Gower. But, so I'm just wondering, when we do invite journalists down to give them the experience of it, are we all looking at the Morgan Hotel expensive restaurant thing, or are we taking journalists down and send them trekking through Gower and that sort of stuff? How do we choose the publications we're aiming at for these journalists?
So we set targets for the people that we're working with to introduce us to these journalists. We put on, we suggest itineraries that we've got. The ones that you pointed out, whilst they may be staying in the likes of Morgan's will, we've got a process where they may comp one particular stay and we'll pay the next. So it isn't a cost that's coming out of all of us. Our budget.
I was thinking in terms of we're staying in Morgan's, you should do the same sort of thing.
Yeah. No, and
Yeah.
we will work depending on the publication and the journalist. We will work with the operator that we feel is most appropriate. Really, some of them could be on Gower, a small B&B, if that's what the journalist will want. Right through to a hotel in the city centre. So the itinerary is very much geared around what their interests are and the publication as well. We might invest in a little bit more in the publication, which is got an extensive readership and is very much aimed at the audience that we would like to attract to the area. But we do work with some of the red tops that you saw there, the likes of Daily Mirror, dare I say it, the Sun newspaper as well, in terms of listing some of the events, some of the attractions that people can come and experience here, which are for visitors that are on a budget and are looking for value for money. So
what's our target audience in this regard? I mean, do we have specific target audiences, specific geographical areas we're targeting?
In terms of geography, yes, the visitor survey and from what the information we had back from businesses, it's very much southwest of England, Bristol, southwest of England. That M4 corridor in London is still a key part, right. and Birmingham. But I think something that we've seen that perhaps we might have ignored over the years because we just thought they would know where we are is the Welsh market. We're seeing a lot of more visitors to the destination from within Wales. So from a sustainability point of view, that's great because they're not traveling so far. They know the area. They don't necessarily need to be really resource heavy when they come here and put strain on services. So I think, that's a market that we're more and more conscious about, and where our social media and digital marketing activity enables us to reach those audiences at a reasonable cost.
Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Steve, for presentation so far. On a far more, excuse me a minute, mundane level, obviously you do a lot of your promotional work and marketing work via social media, I guess, these days. However, I was in Lee Delamere Services the other day, and I was very pleased to see that there was a lot of leaflets for Swansea quite prominently displayed there. To what extent are we still doing that? And certainly you're talking now about Wales and people in Wales, Welsh people seeing this as a destination. How much are we doing to encourage that there at this sort of level? Certainly perhaps for the people who are less electronically minded than others.
Thank you. So we had just before COVID, we were going to produce our last day visitor guide. We had resource to produce 200,000 copies of those, and it was the last time that we were going to produce print from a tourism perspective. We work with a delivery distribution company to make sure that some of the key gateways, I think it was mentioned earlier from Councillor White about how we get key gateways into the city covered. Well, the wider distance, we have targeted places like services in those sort of M4 corridor, Midlands, southwest of England, to make sure they've got copies of our day visitor guide. So we haven't got the resources anymore to produce a guide moving forward. But we produce significant numbers of them to make sure that for a couple of years that some of those key points would be furnished with the guide, so that when we were coming out of COVID and going into full recovery, that people coming into Lee Delamere or some of the other major service networks that they had information on the destination. We also sponsor the stands anyway in a lot of these destinations. So quite cleverly, whilst we may not have a leaflet there, if you look at the sides of the stands, we'll have a picture of Three Cliffs or Rossilly, and then with visitswansea.bay.com on the side of it. So certainly at the High Street station, we've got that and other key access points into the city. I'm sorry, what was the other part of the question?
I think that basically covered it.
Oh, yeah, I think you're
I only say for the less electronically minded people, it might be more useful as well.
We still get phone calls, and we still try to respond to lots of people. Although we had to close the Tourist Information Centre, we still get people calling for information and asking for copies of things. So the team are well versed in dealing with those still. And of course, one of the key things that we produce is maps for people when they come into the city. People still want a map so they can navigate their way around. I think that's still important while the city is changing as well. As Councillor Francis Davis said, the way that you can sort of move around the city has opened up in many respects. And I think that map will be a key piece of print moving forward. So,
Councillor Will Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I missed the start of the presentation because I was in another meeting, so sorry for that. One of the worries from some of my constituents and some further down Gower is where we increase tourism, because there's not adequate accommodation, or not enough adequate accommodation, I should say, sorry, that it puts more pressure on potentially more Airbnbs or holiday lets, and that takes housing away from local people, local families. Obviously, we've got one new hotel opened in Mumbles recently, but Patrick's then shut and has now, taken a lot of rooms out. And I understand one of the other hotels is looking to do the same. So I just want to know how we can do a better job at, providing better accommodation for Gower specifically, really. And I think, Swansea's pretty well covered, but for Gower, what is the demand? Is the demand there, and what can we do to do that better, please?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thomas. So I suppose the most important thing is understanding what we're dealing with in the first instance. And so we did a bed stock survey last year, and that was to establish how many businesses there were operating. We know that the rise in Airbnb has given a sort of not a level playing field for those businesses that are registered, that are licensed, that are providing safe and adequate facilities for visitors, compared to those people who may just put a room on for one weekend just to take advantage of an event that was taking place. And they're not graded, they're not licensed, they haven't got fire regs, they haven't got environmental health licensing. So I think the first step was to do the bed stock audit. So we've got a better picture now in terms of the number of businesses out there. From that, then obviously one of the things that mentioned as a challenge really from a business point of view, but probably will enable that level playing field, is statutory licensing. Initially, it was statutory registration, which got a little bit more engagement from the trade, but statutory licensing now is the term that's being used to make sure that everybody that provides overnight accommodation to anybody visiting Wales is licensed in some respects. So that way, then, we've got a better idea, and there's a level playing field that all businesses are ensuring that it's safe, it's legal, it's, decent facilities. What's going to fall out of that next is obviously the planning, the 182-day planning rule, where private businesses now that previously, had second homes, and I don't want to sort of preempt anything yet, but, what we're seeing already is that businesses that don't operate for 182 days of the year are either selling up now and freeing up those properties, or are being faced with the potential of an increase in it won't be council tax, it'd be business rates they'll have to pay. So, there's going to be a significant change in the way that the amount of properties are able to operate. Hopefully, that will encourage the legitimate businesses to stand out and be able to attract business that perhaps was being siphoned off elsewhere from businesses that weren't, that we either didn't know about, that were Airbnb listed, that were coming in for a couple of months of the year on a very much a seasonal basis, trying to make a little bit of money, and then moving on. So I think there's some regulations that the authority is looking at. There are departments that we're engaging with in terms of planning, licensing, again, all within the gift of the Place Directorate, to make sure that some of these key issues are highlighted to stop things like antisocial behaviour that you talked about, because we did have some examples of that ourselves down at Rossilly, where we had to work with the police around some events that were taking place down there and people staying in unlicensed properties. But that, along with the changes in the planning rule, the licensing, and hopefully working with us to understand what bed stock is out there, will make it a little bit more manageable moving forward.
So I think I'm definitely seeing that. By the way, there's a lot of people who have sold their properties, got in touch who weren't happy about the raising council tax, for example, and have sold their properties, which I think is a good thing. With regards to demonstrating a demand for extra beds in Gower, then that would come after this, would it?
Well, in terms of one of the things that was highlighted in the trade survey was optimism for the future. So one of the slides did indicate that certain sectors were very optimistic. Now, that's not everybody, but accommodation bookings probably are one of the ones that have a slow trickle to start with. That's why we're very keen to be marketing the area, the destination, very early in the year. But what we'll get is we'll get indications from things like Visit Wales do a barometer as well at different times of the year, so we get information from them on what optimism is like, what are bookings like. But we also do, we're quite proactive in that as a team. If people are quiet, we'll put a call out on a Wednesday or a Thursday and say, let us know if you've got any availability, and then we'll push it through late availability offers through the website. And we know that works really well because visitors are using our website as a resource. and businesses are also using it in order to sell rooms. So it's working quite well in that respect.
Okay, thanks. If I could just have one follow-up question, Chair. Thank you. If there is a demonstration, if we can demonstrate there is a high demand in Gower and not enough beds, what is it that we can do to service that? I mean, can we work with the development plan or the planners to, have some potential sites? And are you having those conversations, or when would those conversations take place, please?
Steve, Councillor Roberts wants to do it.
Yeah, look, if there's a demand, and I certainly do believe that there is a demand in Gower. It's a matter of us changing the policy to enable it to happen, so it's in the hands of all of us as councillors to be able to do that. And I know quite often people have said they want to extend and put more rooms in, only then for somebody to say, well, on highways grounds, we might object to it because of the narrower lanes and the visual display going into the accommodation that might be there. But when you go to Cornwall, you see far greater accommodation being available, and it's not a museum. Gower is exceptionally important. It's an area of outstanding natural beauty. Lots of people want to visit there, so we got to balance up visitors being there, but also the people that were born in Gower wanting to remain and live in Gower. And so therefore there is a need of homes being put into Gower. But we do the local development plan. It is a matter for us to actually look at it and put these forward.
Yeah, I'm going to come on to that later on. Okay, well. Oh, Jim, sorry, Steve. Oh, Steve.
Yeah. In regards to accommodation, I know, and Robert is aware of, many millions of pounds of investment that is ready to go into a couple of small projects that are in keeping with the Gower and just flat headed against planning. And when you look at them, you can't really understand why they don't meet planning. There is a huge demand for quality accommodation. My days of staying in a tent are well over, and I like something where I can relax a bit, but it needs to be sorted. When you don't have proper accommodation, you have people making their own rules on what they're going to do and sleeping rough. We have it up on Kefin Bryn, where for quite a while the people were parking up in their mobile homes, and they really shouldn't be. So I think planning and how it does, as Robert says, there's got to be a balance, but I think the balance at the moment is one way. Thank you.
All right, Will. Okay. Councillor Peter Black.
I just wanted to come on the planning issue. I think the local development plan is starting to come for the next phases, and that's where you need to sort of get the input on that. On the accommodation, I think Airbnb in particular, if the quality is so variable. I mean, I've got about 4 in my ward I can think of just at the top of my head. And I know my wife and her friends went to New York and there were cockroaches in her Airbnb. I'm not saying we have that in Swansea, but I mean, how do we actually get those properties licensed and up to a standard? Because a lot more people are using Airbnb to come here now, aren't they?
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Black. That's where the first phase of that, through the bed stock survey, just establishing who is operating out there was so key, because we didn't really have a handle in terms of the most latest figures that that we've got, but we've established it. We've got a database now. Our IT team have helped us produce something which is going to be far more manageable in terms of running reports on areas to establish how many bed spaces we got in specific areas. From there then is statutory registration. Until that's introduced, Airbnb will continue to operate on a unlevel playing field.
So is that in pipeline? Welsh Government looking at doing that?
That's what they're looking at the moment. Yeah, statutory registration. And then from that, then one of the other big significant pieces of legislation that they're just closed consultation on is the tourism levy.
Yes, I know.
So that there's some 3 significant pieces of work there that impact the sector moving forward: planning, statutory registration, and the levy.
Do we know how that levy works? I mean, I've just booked to go to Mallorca, and I know I've got to pay a levy when I get to the place. As you was in a lot of places, I go to America, say you go to San Francisco, you pay tax, which is never shown in the prices. I mean, how is this levy going to work in Wales?
Well, the consultation will obviously establish people's views,
Yeah.
and one of those questions is how they foresee a levy working in Wales.
Right,
You know, they have researched other parts of the world to see how other destinations manage that facility, whether you pay at the airport, whether you pay at reception, when you pay your arrival or departure. I think there's a sewerage tax as well. I was picking up on the weekend that people were paying as well. So there's lots of ways of collecting it, but at the moment, I think we can't preempt anything until they come out with the findings from the consultation. But what it will be, it'll be up to the authority to decide whether it introduces a levy or not.
A lot of places now have an energy levy because the cost of energy is so high.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, members. I think the important thing is that we've learned today, and that is that tourism is such a large employer. Apart from Swansea City Council and the Health Service, it has over 6,000 jobs. As a result of that, I think it's incredibly important as a council that we acknowledge that and actually help with that. And I think one or two of the things that Councillor Robert Francis Davis said and Councillor Black about planning, they need to understand that as well, and just how important it is to our economy. I noticed you said about coming down the M4 corridor. I actually think the far more important corridor for us will be the Heads of the Valleys Road, because when that's Stewell, Birmingham is just over 2 hours away. And that population, the travel to work area in Birmingham is around about between 8 and 12 million. And when you consider that, then from there to Manchester, the huge amount of population that's in that area and that close to the South Wales coast, I think that's incredibly important. And I think that's something that you need to look at seriously, because there's not many stops on that road. You know, once you come out of the bypass that onto the Heads of the Valleys Road, I'm not sure if there's any services there even. You know, so I think this is an important issue for us to take up with Visit Wales as well. I think what has been talked about accommodation in Gower. One of the things I would ask you is, have we done the survey? We used to do a survey many years ago about the number of caravans in Gower and how, I can't say who, but there would be a surprising number of increase in caravans in a certain part, which nobody knew about. But so I was wondering if we'd done that survey, and if we have, if we could make the Scrutiny Board aware of it. I have to say, because of the importance of the jobs and employment and the sector, I think as a Scrutiny Board, we may need to revisit this on a yearly basis to see how the actual improvement, if you like, on our offer to the tourists can be improved year on year, so that we can encourage a greater growth in it because of the importance of our industry to Swansea. If there's no more questions, can I thank both Steves and Councillor Robert Francis Davis for coming along. I think, as I say, it's a very, very critical part of our economy, and as such, we should keep a very close eye on it and help in any way we can. Thank you. We then go on to the Regeneration Programme Project Management Report. Mr. Hugh Mowbray.
Thank you, Chair. Can I see if I can share the report? Okay. Can people see that?
Yes.
Yeah, on screen. Great. Thank you.
Yes, it is here.
Okay. To be honest, because this meeting is a week late, this is now slightly out of date, but I'll try and update as we go along. Copper Bay, firstly, there is a rough sleeping issue in the car park on the south side, which is trying to be resolved at the moment, and there have been there are letters issued to the people there to actually try and remove them from the car park. But that needs to happen, as it is causing issues. There are no events on in the stadium at the moment, but that needs to be dealt with. The glass lift is now fully open and operating, so that's a positive. Some parts were received to make that work again, and the steps in front of the arena, the spiral staircase there, anybody who's been in the area will have noticed that's all sort of hoarded off at the moment, and that is being completely redone at the moment to resolve the issues in terms of the steps and the ponding and various other issues and the railings in that sort of area. So that is actually now sort of that is being resolved. That's on site for about 4 to 6 weeks for those works to be completed. I can't see any hands because I'm in presenting mode. So if you do want to ask any questions, please come in. If not, I'll move on to shaping Swansea.
Hang on a minute, Hugh. Hang on.
Sorry.
Any questions on this item? No, I can't see any hands. Carry on.
Okay, thank you. Shaping Swansea, this is now sort of out of date in a way, because unfortunately we didn't get the city centre levelling up bid, and the TAN 15 has now been issued for consultation, which is a step in the right direction. There's a lot of positive changes there which allow things to move forward. So we are doing some work to analyse that at the moment, but I'm quite pleased in terms of the direction of travel of the TAN at the moment. And on the Luff bid, we obviously didn't have that initially anyway, so we are working with Urban Splash to look at how the phases of the developments can move forward, and that's something we're looking at getting a report in place by the end of next month. So that's that there is a lot of work being done on that, to be honest, which is good. In terms of the agreements, the legal agreements with Urban Splash, there is a process to go through on that, and that's what the stage 2 refers to there. The stage 1 is largely complete. We are, to a degree, taking a step backwards to go forwards in terms of looking at how we deal with the phases and the elements of the scheme in the light of the Luff rejection. Having said that, there is another round of Luff starting in July of this year. So that's all I was going to say on shaping Swansea at the moment.
Okay, Hugh. The only thing I was going to ask you about is on TAN 15. Maybe in the closed session, you'd like to say a little bit more about that.
Yep, by all means, fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Swansea Central North. This is obviously the one of Urban Splash's schemes, so it does refer to levelling up and TAN 15 there, which we've already discussed in that respect. And it's the issue there is, again, that sort of Urban Splash. We had 2 days of meetings with them last week, working through the process and the schemes. So we are looking to get sort of the plan B in place, for want of a better phrase, in terms of delivery of those sites, now that we know we're not going to get the Luff in the short term. So that's moving forward. We're looking at the public sector hub in that location, and we're looking at sort of the rental values, market values, and how that can be taken forward. And we've got a number of very positive discussions actually with the Government Property Agency over the last couple of weeks in terms of numbers of people who are looking at potential accommodation in Swansea. So that's something which will play out over the next sort of 3 to 6 months. But I think the direction of travel on that and the demand is quite significant. So that's another positive for that one. So,
again, Hugh, I think if we can talk about that in the closed session, because I think that's quite an important issue with regards to city centre.
Yep, no, agree. That's fine. Civic centre relocation, again, this is all linked together really with some of the other projects, and the timescales in terms of delivering the hub dictates really when staff can move out to the civic centre, and also it links to the BHS building and sort of the elements of the library, etc., moving out of that as well. So that's something which we will need to come back to over the coming months, I guess. TAN 15. Well, we've discussed this to a degree already. There is a revised draft out for consultation, which there are improvements to. So and Chair, as you said, we can sort of have a further discussion in the closed section on that. So I think we've just there's no more to say on that one either at this point in time. If I move on to Castle Square. The planning application literally is about to be finalised and released on the on Castle Square, so that's moving forward. The quality audit was the last bit which had been submitted and has now been signed off by Highways colleagues. So I'm waiting to hear that the planning application has been finally released in that respect, and the tender process is about to start, and it's a two-stage design and build process, and we're going fully open, so it'll be completely open to anybody to bid for that coming forward. And again, that will start it's starting in the next week or so to actually get the tender process moving and getting sort of, and we are having quite a lot of interest in that in terms of the initial documents at the moment. So that's another one which is going to move forward this year.
On Castle Square, is it going to be purely private finance, or will the council have to finance some of it?
This, at the moment, this is a council funded project. It's not a private project. Having said that, there are 4 commercial units in the in the scheme, which will be let to private tenants.
Sorry,
has it gone through planning?
no.
It's almost through planning. There's I'm expecting that the planning decision to be released, if it hasn't already, in the next day or so.
That's just officer delegated, is it?
I think so, but I'd have to come back to you just to confirm that. I can check and confirm, but yeah.
I would have thought with a city centre project of this nature, it should go to committee.
Well, I'll have to confirm that, but
Okay.
I'm not sure. To be honest with you, I tend to agree with you. I think it probably did go to committee, but I'll check and I can sort of confirm to come back to you on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Community Hub, this is a corporate property project. They are going through the programs, etc., with the appointed contractor at the moment, which has caused a little bit of delay, but that's something which is being worked through as we speak. So I don't think that's all we need, all there is to say on that one at the moment. Civic Centre decant. This links to the accommodation strategy which Jeff Bacon's been preparing, and obviously this is another linked aspect in terms of the hub and BHS and how things move forward in terms of both of those projects to enable the decant from the civic centre to happen. So that's what that's where we are on that one at the moment. So okay, Skyline. That is moving.
Yeah, again here, I think we'll leave that till we get to in closed session.
Okay, happy to do that. Paul Ralph, I'm not sure. I don't think is able to make the call at the moment. Paul did email me earlier because he's in another meeting. So if I cover these elements for the time being, the powerhouse, we're looking at completion by the end of February for handover to Penderyn for their fit out, and that will be done under a license whilst everything is completed in terms of the leases, etc. So very positive. If anybody's been past it really recently, the whole of the powerhouse is looking fantastic actually, which is a really strong anchor for what Steve mentioned earlier, actually, in terms of the destination that can be created in the Harvard, and that links to the Skyline aspect of when and if Skyline is delivered, then that with Penderyn is a real catalyst really for the potential leisure destination that can happen in Harvard, which is again positive. The another part of this is the lab building. Things are slightly overtaken on this because there was no Welsh Government funding available for this, but this was included in the Harvard Luff bid, which was successful. So these works will be completed to protect the lab building as the Luff bid unfolds in that respect in terms of the works on site, which is really positive. Palace Theatre, again, there is a completion date of November 23. There are delays. It has been a difficult project, as you can imagine, in a difficult listed and historic building, which has been left to rot for many years by the previous owners, unfortunately. But so we are looking at that and working with Tramshed, who are one of the potential occupiers for the building, to see if there is an alternative for them to start growing their community really before the building is ready. And that's the last one on that. So yeah.
Hugh, on the Palace Theatre, in the Evening Post, the article reads that circa 120 square meters net internal area of high quality open plan for designed to be sublet, blah blah blah. But it doesn't say if we've done any. Have we done any letting?
Yes, the company that's going to take the whole of the building is Tramshed, and they will then be subletting to various other companies as it goes on in like a serviced space provision basically. But they would like to start building that community as soon as possible. So they want to look at other space in Swansea whilst they're waiting for the palace to be completed.
So effectively, they've taken the head lease and then they're going to sublet it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Mike.
Yeah, the only question I've got regarding the Palace Theatre, I just can't quite understand what's meant by the soft landing.
I'm not sure I do, to be honest. It's you probably need Paul to answer some of these questions.
Yeah, sorry, it says as a soft landing in order to meet their business commitments until the palace is ready.
Oh, sorry. Yes, that's what that means is they would like to look at sort of locating in other buildings in Swansea to start building their community before the palace is ready to open, because there are a few delays there, unfortunately. So that's the Tramshed, who are. They've obviously got a business in Cardiff, and this would be their first flexible office space in Swansea, basically.
Right. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Jeff Jones.
Yeah, I noticed there's no reference to 7172, the Kingsway and Barclays Bank. I know the last meeting we actually had, you said it would be, shall we say, above ground surface in 2023. And I think the project is completing in 2023. I just going to ask, really, have we had any further update on take-up of the office accommodation? I think you actually said that there were some interested parties in the past.
Yeah.
And with regards to Barclays, you were going to, shall we say, retender?
Yeah. Yes. In terms of Barclays, that was retendered. All the prices came in significantly higher than the budgets that were available. So that has been mothballed for the time being, and we may take it forward in a different way. We're going to have to look at that in detail, but one of the options is actually, because the 7172 is now emerging from the ground, and it's going to be looking really good, that we actually market it for private sector to actually deliver the Barclays elements rather than us, and that is something which there is interest in. I've had communications from a few parties, so we can certainly look at that. In terms of 7172 itself, it is now coming out. I drove past it last week, and the concrete is coming up above the hoardings, and it will start to build significantly now, which is a real positive. In terms of lettings, we are just finalising heads of terms for the first major tenant there, which is for 25,000 square foot, which is just under about a third of the building. So it's quite a substantial letting. So that's a real positive. And we are currently engaging with agents and looking at producing marketing collateral to start marketing the rest of the building in earnest in that respect. So it's started. It's going well. We have got interest, and it's in terms of buildings of this nature, you need to be coming substantially out of the ground and get into completion before you will get a lot of tenants actually signing up. But it's a good time now to start the detailed marketing on the remainder of the building.
Sorry, just to clarify, when is the completion date or the expected completion date?
That is the expected completion date is currently October 2023, but the contractor is suggesting there may be some minor delays, but whether that is something which we're working through at the moment.
Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Peter Black.
I just wanted to say, Chair, according to the council website, the decision notice on Castle Square was issued on Friday just gone. So
Correct.
the 20th, but there's a further application for discharge conditions in.
Yes, thank you very much. But it was, I know it was expected any day, so that's positive. It has been released, and that's just moves things forward now. It doesn't stop the tendering anyway, but that's the next key phase on this key stage for that project.
I find that incredible that such a major city centre project was delegated decision as opposed to going to committee. But there we are. Okay. Right. Thank you, Hugh. If there's any more questions for Mr. Hugh Mowbray in this session? No? Okay, can we move on then? The next item on the agenda, item 8, is the letter that we sent to the leader, and there's a copy of it there in the minutes. Item 10 is the exclusion of the public. Can somebody move the relative minute?
I move.
Councillor Back, seconded.
I'll
Councillor
second.
Michael Locke. Okay, then obviously, pardon? The recording will now be ceased. So we now move on.